day everyone, I am Angel Joy Bique, one of the reporter, and our topic for today is Chapter 5, Physiocracy, the First Economic Model. Economics is commonly described as the study of how humans make use of available productive resources, including their own labor and skills, to produce goods and services for human use. Economics is a branch of social science that talks about and deals with producing products and services with the help of resources, because if we don't have any resources, it is hard to produce products. It is important to produce because we need to give the needs of human, for example, a bread. In producing a bread, it must have ingredients and equipment and the people who make, which is the resources. Relationships of inputs and outputs, but it becomes a social science rather than physics or engineering because humans practice a high degree of functional specialization. So it is more called social science because a person's ability can do more when it comes to inputs and outputs, and not in any machine that belongs to engineering or in physics that has used chemicals. In short, it is social science because human or individual are more working or producing than anything. Adam Smith, sometimes described as the father of economics, Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, 1776, was published in England. Adam Smith was published this, and it was flourished because it is study and tell the very importance of nature in producing resources in an economic process, because we all know that nature is the one and foremost need to produce a resource to make many goods and services that needs of human to believe. And I believe that we cannot live as human without nature. Physiocrats. It is the process that enables a complex economy to function. Physiocrats are the ones who concerned with the economy and in the economic process, like in producing goods and services, up to the marketplace where the produced things was to be sold. And they will also study the resources, whether it is marked or not. 18th century France and the Physiocratic School. The long reign of Louis XIV, which ended in 1715, left France with a magnificent court and a nearly ruined economy. Louis XIV left the France ruined economy because he led the economy of the France in a rich way. He built a palace which is called Versailles, but his way of leading is not good because he uses and he buys many resources na nagkakahalaga ng malaki pero kakaunti lang ang kita. Other reason is the people who are skilled in producing is get lost because of protests in France, and his financier Colbert was make a rule which is very hard for them, especially for the country of the France, to make many resources, goods, and services which is rich in their country. But in the end of this, nalubog sila sa utang dahil na rin sa mabigat na bayarin nila ng buwis because they buy more on high prices. That's why he left France with ruined economy. So even the country of French did not success in under Louis XIV in their economy. The country of French was raised up and modern again in a way of writing books such as philosophy in English, so that in this way they write all their experience in economic. They tell in their writing what is all about the economic, and they consider themselves as a economist, which is called also a physiocracy, that studies the world of economic in building resources to make a good and services to help the economy to develop and to be rise up. And this is their writings. Montesquieu's Spirit of Laws appeared in 1748. Diderot and D'Alembert began their great encyclopedia in 1751. Candide was published in 1759. Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Social Contract, one of the most influential books on political thought of modern times, was published in 1762. During the height of Physiocrats' influence, France was only 20 years away from the great social explosion, the French Revolution. So in this part, it tells that if the recommendations or suggestion of Physiocrats is used in the time of developing economic of France, is they would have a law and order of revolution in that time. Pero hindi pa rin nila maiiwasan na gumasta ng malaki. But in the end, and the good thing, Physiocrats have given more contribution in the first developing and in growing of the economic of France in a way of giving a advanced knowledge in a form of economic. The originator of Physiocratic doctrine is François Quesnay, 1694 to 1774. Was brought up in peasant surroundings despite the fact that his father was a lawyer. Physiocratic doctrine, François Quesnay is a former student and studies a medical scientist before, and he was the leader of the profession. And then Quesnay was invited to be a scientist of the mistress of Louis XIV, which is Madame de Pompadour, and that was the time that he saw the way of developing the economic of France in the time of Louis XIV. So he questioned more on economic and he gathered more information, and that is the time he interested and published writings which is encyclopedia in the age of 62, and the other one is Tableau Economique in 1758. Most important disciples was Victor Riquetti, Marquis de Mirabeau, 1715 to 89, The Friend of Mankind or Treatise on Population, 1756. So because Mirabeau is the important disciples of Quesnay, Mirabeau for Tableau Economique in 1758. Most important disciples was Victor Riquetti, Marquis de Mirabeau, 1715 to 89, The Friend of Mankind or Treatise on Population, 1756. So because Mirabeau is the important disciples of Quesnay, Mirabeau forced o pinursige niya si Quesnay na it said that the labor is not source of economic wealth until they studied a Physiocratic in a summer days in 1758. At ang isa pa niyang disciple ay si Pierre Samuel Dupont de Nemours, 1739 to 1817, because he is also the way and who helped Quesnay to give a book of writings of Quesnay to Thomas Jefferson that is interested to the writing of Physiocrats, lalo na at isa na rin siya sa mga disappointed sa nangyari noon sa France so that they will go in United States. The Physiocratic model. Physiocracy suggests to the English ear something like physiology, which is an especially tempting interpretation. Physiocracy is suggested only because physiocracy is an school of economists that founded in France, where this is a place that is studying about the law of economic, which is the resources, supply, and demand of a product and services to produce. In short, they will train like economists. Physiocratic model, it was built on the idea that social phenomena are governed, as are physical phenomena, by laws of nature that are independent of human will and intention. Physiocratic was the people who want to study about the natural laws of economic, which is the nature, and they need to study and learn. Two words are involved in this. One is the physicist, the one that study the weather such as rain, thunder, typhoon, disaster, and many more, to be known by professionals, producers, what they make, and the other one is economists who study about the resources that must produce to make some products or services. Physiocratic theory was an attempt to depict how an economy operates so that the underlying laws are revealed. It is a theory that states which is tell us that in running economy, the economic policy also that under in government must follow. Physiocratic model is that goods and services are produced not for the direct use of their producers but for sale to others. The physiocratic model shows that both manufacturing and agriculture is making and gaining an income by their own produced products. At ipinapakita dito na ang kita ng lupa ay manggagaling sa agriculture, and it is stated that agriculture is productive because even though the land is just right there, but having more plants or it is used for agriculture, it is gaining income. But in manufacturing, when it comes here, it produce only enough, or in other words, walang nasasayang. Two factors of production between labor and land. Labor must be maintained, its service obtained without cost. Land, its services without cost. The two factors of labor and land is labor in producing products. It is a service where you cannot get without paying. And the second one is the land, which is you can get it free because its service is free also. The agricultural yields a net product or surplus, which as shown in physiocratic model becomes the income of landowner. That is the one that contribute physiocrats in economy to become more progress, which is the agricultural that is essential to build up to make an income by planting many kinds of plants with free service that can be used for investment. And it was the most essential way to be productive in economy, unlike in French in past years ago that the French is rich in agriculture, but they will waste only because they are not aware and inefficient in agricultural terms. Laissez-faire. Laissez nouns faire or leave us alone originated in the 17th century as a criticism of Colbert's policy. Later, it became identified with the economic theories of Adam Smith. It is an act of working without any regulation or having a slight regulation, or in other words, their work free, and it is an act that came from the French country. The physiocrats applied their theory most specifically to the problem of taxation. The paying system of tax in France in 18th century was very bad because it is having a specialized treatment and paying, so that in this part they not considering agriculture, but physiocrats defense that all the taxes in income in agriculture was paid, and the other reason is the excess, which is the income of the government was from agricultural sector. And because they're having problem in tax in France is many of them are not paying correctly because they are close into the power, which is not good, and it was the reign of Louis XIV and arrested in a way of his mistress. The significance of physiocracy in the history of social science. In a certain sense, physiocracy was little more than an intellectual fad, one of the many of the court of Versailles, and like all fads, its life was brief. Physiocracy was known in year of 1760s and ended in 1770. Kenney is the one also who stopped of being interested in economy. Even Kenney left and stopped or give an end to physiocracy, there are some economists that continue studying the economics and they publish their own books like Smith, which is the classical economics, and also Karl Marx. He continued the work of Kenney because he knew that it has much value to the economy to help. The democracy was little more than an intellectual fad, one of the many of the court of Versailles, and like all fads, its life was brief. Physiocracy was known in year of 1760s and ended in 1770. Kenney is the one also who stopped of being interested in economy. Even Kenney left and stopped or give an end to physiocracy, there are some economists that continue studying the economics and they publish their own books like Smith, which is the classical economics, and also Karl Marx. He continued the work of Kenney because he knew that it has much value to the economy to help the economy to be developed easily, and the significance of physiocracy in the history of social science. It studied and discovered the needs, such as the resources that needs of human society and having a well-functioned economy. The concept of spontaneous order. Spontaneous order, not man-made or man-governed. Spontaneous order means that it is the way of self-act in a voluntary and good manner. It called it not man-made or man-governed because it is doing an action which is good for all with self only, not ordered to do by government or any people, which is better and one of the contribute of physiocrats. And because of this order, it resulted it with good one, which is having better order and process in marketplace, where the produced products and services will be sell for the wealth of economy. At sa kabuuan, ito ay isang pagkukusa. Contribution of Adam Smith, which is determining the prices and market values in the market economy. Through this concept of spontaneous order, the physiocrats is giving an idea and study only in the economic policy, which is the labor, production, resources, and many more. But they did not know the value and the correct way of prices of the produced resources, products, services in that time. So that Adam Smith, tinanong niya ang sarili niya kung paano ang market value and prices ng mga ito. So it is the time that Adam Smith started to gather and study about it, and the most is, it is very important to know.
Economics classes. The idea that human society is a hierarchical structure and that this structure is composed of distinct and discrete social classes is so old that it can hardly be traced. But the Socratic model involved an important innovation in how the class structure of society is conceived by the social scientists. Instead of using the traditional status categories such as the nobles, clergy, and third state of French politics, the tableau contains categories or classes that are economic in nature. Economics is the practical and theoretical science of the production and distribution of wealth. It is based around the system of the production, buying and selling of goods and services. Economics can help students understand human behavior and make better decisions throughout their lives. The orthodox classical economists. Adam Smith was a Scottish philosopher widely considered as first modern economist. Smith defined economics as an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. Adam Smith is the father of economics. The Wealth of Nations was first published. Adam Smith's economic theory is the idea that markets tend to work best when the government leaves them alone. David Ricardo was a classical economist best known for his theory on wage and profit. The labor of theory valued the theory of comparative advantage and the theory of rents. David Ricardo was a British political economist, one of the most influential of the classical economists. He was also a politician and a member of the Parliament of Great Britain and Ireland. John Stuart Mill, a liberal classical economist, Mill was an advocate of individual rights, progressive social policies, and utilitarianism. He believed in a moral theory called utilitarianism, that actions that lead to people's happiness are right and that those that lead to suffering are wrong. Among economists, he is best known for his 1848 work, Principles of Political Economy, which became a leading economic textbook for decades after its publication. Circular flow. The circular flow of expenditure is familiar today to any student who has taken an introduction college course in economics. Circular flow of the economy distills the idea outlined above and shows the flow of money and goods and services in a capitalistic economy. Karl Marx was a German philosopher, critic of political economy, economist, historian, sociologist, political theorist, journalist, and socialist revolutionary. Karl Marx believed in the labor theory of value to explain relative differences in market prices. He worked primarily in the realm of political philosophy and was a famous advocate for communism. John Maynard Keynes, whose general theory of employment, interest, and money, 1936, has been the most influential book in economics of the 20th century. An English economist whose ideas fundamentally changed the theory and practice of macroeconomics and the economic policies of governments. William Harvey, discovery of the function of the heart and the circulatory of blood was the greatest medical discovery of all the time. Father of circulatory, the first to recognize the full circulation of the blood in the human body and to provide experiments and arguments to support this idea. Quesnay, an 18th century French school of thinkers, the Psychocrats, who involved the first complete system of economics. A French economist and physician of the Psychocratic school, he is known for publishing the Tableau Economique in 1758, which provided the foundations of the ideas of the Psychocrats. Surplus. Surplus occupies an important place in the history of economic theory, playing a central role in classical economics. Marx economics and the model of efficient resource use developed by the neoclassical school in the late 19th century. A surplus describes the amount of an asset or resource that exceeds the portion that actively utilized. A surplus can refer to a host of different items, including income, profits, capital, and goods.
The single tax. It is a system of taxation based mainly or exclusive on one tax, typically chosen for its special properties, often being a tax on land and value, a tax to be levied on a single item such as real estate, a sole source of public revenue. So the single tax, it is a taxation system in which a tax no one commodity, usually land, is the only source of revenue. And also, the single tax was to be property tax on land but not on improvements, at a rate high enough to provide adequate revenue to the government. These tax payments would represent the rent, those who use the land owe to the public. Advances. In a classical economics, three categories of factor of production are employed for analytical purposes: land, labor, and capital. The third of these pose problems of special difficulty for economic theory, many of which are associated with the fact that the capital using methods of production involve time. So the factors of production are the resources used in creating and producing a good or service and are the building blocks of an economy. And also, the factors of production are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, which are seemingly interwoven together to create economic growth. And it improved economic growth raises the standard of living by lowering production costs and increasing wages. And the factors of production are what's needed for a company to earn an economic profit. So there are four types of factor of production. This is land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. So land. Land is any natural resource that is needed or used in production of good or service. Land can also include any resource that comes from the land such as oil, gas, and other commodities such as copper and silver. Typically, land includes any natural resource that used as raw materials in production of process. Labors. So the labor is the amount of physical, mental, and social effort used to produce goods and services and economy. It supplies expertise, the manpower and service needed to turn raw materials into finished product and services. And also, labor is the number of workers into the economy and the effort they put into producing goods and services. So capital. So the capital refers to the capital goods such as manufacturing plants, machinery, tools, or any equipment used in the production process. Capital might refer to fleet or trucks or forklifts as well as heavy machinery. So the last is entrepreneurship. So the entrepreneurship is the fourth factors and include the visionaries and innovators behind the production process. The entrepreneurs combine all the other factors of production to conceptualize, create, and produce the product or service. They are the drivers behind any technical change in the economic system, which has been shown to be a major source of economic growth. Ideology. The Pisocrats, as noted above, were a group of disciples gathered around a master convinced that they possessed the truth on essential issue of economic. Most of them would have acknowledged that there were still some unsolved scientific problems, but these were regarded as minor. The two main tasks was to convey the truth to others, especially those with political powers. An ideology is a set of opinions or beliefs of a group or an individual. Very often, ideology refers to a set of political beliefs or a set of ideas that characterize a particular culture. And also, it is a system of ideas and ideals, especially one which form the basic economic or political theory and policy.